Okay. I would like to call to order the Town of Hanover Select Board meeting for Monday, July 15, 2024. Welcome. We do not have a public hearing. Are there any Select Board members who wish to reorder any items on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to announcements recognition. So since we last met, there has been news on the town manager front. For those of you who have not read it in the paper, I will nonetheless announce it that on behalf of the town, we announced last week that town manager Alex Torpey is transitioning out of his role as town manager with the departure date that Alex and the Select Board have set for July 31st. So we're going to hear from Alex. I'm just going to say a few brief remarks. I think Athos was going to make some remarks. So I would like to personally, and also on behalf of the town, the Select Board, thank Alex for his many contributions over the last 2 years. He has brought a huge level of energy across a whole slew of endeavors, which is impressive. Thank you. So thank you very much. I will also just say that we, by unanimous vote last week, the Select Board has named Rob Hausman as interim town manager. Rob brings deep knowledge of the town's people, policies, infrastructure, plans for the future, and he has begun working with Alex to ensure a smooth transition. Welcome also to Rob in your new role. Thank you for taking that on. Office.
Yes, I'd just like to make a few remarks. Thank you, Carrie, for recognizing me. When Alex started this job a couple years ago now, it was obvious that he really needed, things changed very quickly in the town, and Alex has one of the strongest skills I've noticed over the last few years working with him very closely is his ability for critical thinking, looking at things from a different point of view, bringing in new ideas, and those skills were really needed almost immediately on the second or third day on the job. We had a lot of issues facing the town which were unforeseen, and Alex applied his skills right away, rolled up his sleeves. Areas such as communication with the public, economic development, moving things along downtown. I could continue to list. I think just to sum it up, I don't want to belabor the point too long, but to sum it up, the town really is much affected and is in a better place, and a lot of the impact that Alex has had on the town is going to continue in a very positive way for years to come. So thank you very much for all of that effort, Alex. It's very much appreciated by this board and by the town.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
No, sure. Yeah, I was just going to add also, I mean, I appreciate the comments, Carrie and Athos, and the opportunity to get to work there. I mean, it seems like a couple days ago that I was interviewing in part in this very room. And we accomplished a lot, as you sort of alluded to, over the last couple of years. And all of that is rests on the shoulders of the staff that work for the town. And, over the last couple of years, we've had a lot of conversations with our staff. And I just wanted to make sure to thank all of our department heads and all of the staff, all of our board members, and all of our different boards and committees for just being so supportive and welcoming. Over the last couple of years, I think it's hard to realize how much is really happening behind the scenes. And, even in these meetings here where we go through a lot of detail, sometimes a lot of detail, it's still the tip of the iceberg, right? It's still only a small piece of all of the activity that's happening in all the different departments every single day, at night, on weekends, in the worst weather, when we're on vacation and taking holidays, there's staff that are doing things. And that's just all really amazing. And beyond that, the support and the interaction with the community itself, residents and business owners and just all the different stakeholders in town has been pretty amazing. People were very welcoming, to a new guy from New Jersey, and I appreciate that. And then even over the last week, just gotten so many nice emails and calls from community members who, appreciate the efforts that we're all trying to make, working on a lot of different things in the community. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to get to work here, but also not just to work in Hanover, but for the job in Hanover to have brought me up to the Upper Valley, which is my home for the foreseeable future. And I didn't really know anything about the Upper Valley before coming up here, and now I know a little bit more, not a lot more. And so I just feel really lucky to have landed in this sort of place. And lastly, I would say it's also really lucky, there's a lot of ongoing projects right now, and what gives me a lot of comfort is getting to pass things off to someone like Rob, who not only have we worked a lot together on many different issues, but considering how many of the things that are sort of in the queue are related to housing and mobility and transportation and economic development and public placemaking and all this sort of stuff, like Rob has got so much experience in that regard. And we started to have some conversations about transitioning stuff. That's also been the tip of the iceberg still so far, but I feel good about knowing that there's just going to be a lot of great work in this room and from Rob and all of our staff. So just wanted to thank everybody for that.
Thank you, Alex. And did you
So
want to
tell us what's next.
Yes.
If you want to.
Sure.
But I also want to wish you, personally well, and thank you for all that you've done. So
Thank you, Joanna. Kind of going back to consulting life, and so I have a consulting practice that I've just started to get going, and it's going to sort of do two things. One, which is with a bunch of other town managers and other kind of folks in the Upper Valley, try to find ways, offering basically free workshops and webinars and resources to help people in different towns in the Upper Valley kind of learn about their local government and how to get more involved and how to affect change in the community that they live in. And so kind of providing those sort of things, but then also doing consulting, with towns and with nonprofits that do work in that space, which there are many of in the Upper Valley. So I'll be doing a lot of that. And have a new podcast. I just can't let this, face for podcasting go to waste. That's going to be called Upper Valley Vibes, and it's going to be sort of similar to the Hanover Happenings. I obviously have a thing for alliterations, and just very similar of telling stories of a lot of the people that are sort of behind the scenes working on stuff. So between that and starting to build a house and write some science fiction and hopefully spend some more time outside, and although these days it's a little challenging, it's nice and air conditioning right now. So that's a little bit of what's next, but be living and working in the Upper Valley, and so I'm sure we'll bump into many folks and get to cross paths with people in the future.
great.
We wish you much success.
Thank you.
And Rob, did you, thank you for stepping in, did you want to make some remarks?
I'll make a couple of statements. First, thank you for serving. This is often a thankless job, and I'm grateful to have your support in this change and transition. I want to acknowledge that this is going to be a team effort. The senior leadership team, most of which are here tonight, are going to be working to move us forward in a positive way, continue to make the progress that we strive to make, and support all of our boards and commissions and volunteers, the people who make this town move forward. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to working with you, and hope for a little patience.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you. Okay, so we turn now to public comment. This is the time during the meeting when the public may address, and bear with me 1 second. While I pull something up. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak? And then I will read this before you do. If so, please come here and I will read something in a second. Okay, this is the period of the agenda when the public is welcome to address the Select Board. We ask that one addresses issues not already scheduled on the agenda. We ask that individuals restrict their comments to 5 minutes. Questions will be directed to the chair. The chair will decide whether to answer questions or take comments. That's a comment to me, but please, if there are any of you who would like to make comments, this is your opportunity to do so for items not on the agenda. Please, and if you could please sit here at the table and speak into the microphone so that we can, that the television audience can hear you.
Hi, I'm Diane Buskey, and we have a property on 5, 7, and 9 Allen Street. And save my comments on the paint for that on the agenda. I'm curious if any, I know that of course I'm talking about the Allen Street closure. And I know that there have been traffic studies and strips for counts. But I'm curious, is anyone monitoring the actual flow of traffic on a daily basis? And by that I mean you're parking your delivery trucks where they should be parked. You're turning into Maple Street, and then you're turning from what's left of Allen Street into the municipal parking lot. It's two ways, which doesn't work. A lot of times with the delivery trucks, you have to wait until someone comes forward and they can inch by. And God help you if somebody's trying to pull out. So I'm just curious if there's any monitor, there are cameras that you're looking at, or anybody else monitoring this besides Steve and I, which are going nuts. Also, the traffic from School Street? School Street, taking a left onto Allen Street on the one-way. Again, not a no-no, but is anybody watching it? So that's my comment.
So I'm looking to Alex and or Rob. So would you like to address them?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the most of the data collection is really sort of like you mentioned is kind of over the long term. You know, the strips that were in the road, the counter that's outside. Yeah. And so that's a little more long term. In the short term, we're all definitely keeping our eyes on it, and between the police department and the parking division. But I would say that if you or anybody else notices anything that you think we should know about, we have an email address set up specifically. I will probably add, actually I need to add Rob to that too. Now I'm remembering that Liz and I are on, and that's allenstreet@hanovernh.org. So we do have the survey link as well, you know, for people filling out the survey. But if you have a comment that you want to make sure we see that's something happening on Allen Street, send it to that email address and we can make sure to look into it. Because at the end of the day, you know, we can't, you know, place people out there the whole day. You guys are probably on the street, you know, more than anybody else. Yeah. And so if you have comments like that, please do send them over.
Or pictures or something.
Yeah, pictures. Yeah, that stuff is very helpful.
Yeah, but there's no way to monitor it with your cameras. The town of Hanover.
It's, I mean, a little bit, but we don't have a staff person who can just kind of watch that.
Yeah. Okay. And then I mentioned in the Upper Valley, whatever it's called, a little business meeting, which thank you for including us in that. I thought there should be signage for detour on Allen Street. And I know that there are detours for parking, but there is no signage for Allen Street, turn here on Maple, Allen Street, turn here into the municipal parking lot. That's just an observation we've had. I guess that's it for now.
Alex, is it Allen, ALLENSTREET?
Spelled out, yeah.
Thank you.
Allen Street spelled out.
Thanks, Dan.
And we did avoid this time around, we got a lot of complaints that the last stuff that we put on Allen Street looked like a construction zone. So staff had actually discussed the idea of using orange detour signs. But we nixed that because we got so much feedback from businesses that people didn't want it to look construction-y. This is sort of the tough balance that we try to strike. We did put up about a dozen or 15 directional parking signs around town, and hopefully it helps a little bit. No, it's not quite as clear.
There's little round ones too on the sidewalk.
And then the goal was to try to get people to the parking lots with the signs in the street, and then from a couple of the parking lots we put Allen Street stickers to try to get people from the parking lots to Allen Street, but it's certainly not perfect.
Little stickers just now.
Yeah, that was a recent, yeah.
Or then they dug up the sidewalk and the sticker went away.
And it's right, exactly.
But the sidewalks are looking good.
Yeah,
Sidewalks are great.
Sidewalks are looking good.
Yeah.
Alex, can the dispatch camera can they look at stuff if it's noticed and they don't, like, if you don't happen to get a photo, can that then be gotten, maybe?
If someone gave us a complaint and they gave us a date and time of something and said, hey, there was a delivery truck, I mean, when you sent the pictures of the trucks in front of your building's doors, that was, you know, that spoke 1,000 words. They said, okay, well, this is clearly not acceptable. But if you didn't get a picture, but you know the date and time, that is something we could go back and look at, but we wouldn't have someone that's, we have like so many cameras, you know, they wouldn't be able to kind of monitor it live. And certainly if there was damage done to a prop or something like that, we can always go back and do that in certain areas where we have the cameras.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who have issues they would like to address?
I just have a question.
Would you mind coming up to the table? Thank you.
I just
Yes,
have a
and if you could
question.
just tell us your name.
Allen Street, when it goes down.
I'm sorry, your name.
Oh, Betty Pizzuti.
Okay.
When it goes past Joe Barry's, when you're coming down Allen Street, and then you have to stop at the stop sign. Have they opened that up for traffic to come? Because I was standing on Allen Street the other day, and this person came up that, and I was taken back because I said, would they open that end of the street up for traffic? And pulled in, and he went down to the bank at the end of the parking lot. But I was just curious because I wasn't sure. I said, well, maybe they opened that end of Allen Street for traffic to come into the parking lot.
I don't believe that's the case.
No.
It's one-way exit.
That's what I thought it
Yes.
was, but then
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it got changed.
We've seen people come up the wrong way for years. I think it's probably gotten a little worse, would be my sense, just from being out there a little bit. That's another kind of example. If you do see someone doing that and you feel like it's dangerous, you can give the non-emergency line at the police department a call, and we can have someone go check it out. We did look at making it two-way, and Rob would be better than me to be able to speak to this, or Pete.
I would think
But the
that would be
turning
a-
radiuses didn't quite accommodate it without
Yeah,
removing
I
the
would think that
parking,
would be a mess.
and that we did not want to do any more
Thank you.
parking.
Is there a do not enter sign then?
Yeah.
I thought
There
there
is,
was.
I think people know, this is totally anecdotal, I think the people coming up know they're not supposed to be.
Unlike the people who turn north on North Main Street.
They have no idea.
They have no idea, and we're like, no. That happens a couple times a day.
But we can also look to, I mean, maybe there's an opportunity to have an additional sign somewhere we did add some pedestrian signs for the crossing across the parking lot, so we can certainly look at that.
Those tire spikes,
Okay.
like those tire spikes with the.
Sorry, Dan,
Yeah,
do you have
that's-
another?
sure.
Please,
That'll
come
work.
forward.
That would send a message.
Sorry, just going through my notes here again. I just, also at that business meeting, I'm saying it again because I don't know if do you pass the minutes out of those meetings as well,
I sent them out this afternoon.
to the select board as well? Or-
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And everybody who's on that email list.
Yeah.
And anyone who's not and wants to be, just let me know.
I was just curious, I know that you have the little scans for the surveys, and I think it hits a population of pedestrians. I don't think it hits a population of people driving through town. And I didn't know if it would be beneficial for the town or the rec department or whoever to write a letter to the editor of the Valley News and perhaps get an idea, maybe inform the Upper Valley as to this survey and get a bigger picture of how this pilot program is working for the whole Upper Valley, not just Hanover, and not just the pedestrians that are coming into town. So that was just another suggestion. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that something we can do to broaden the survey?
Yeah, the only caveat, I mean, I think Diane's right that there's a bias on the street, of course, is that people scanning a QR code and using the phone are probably not in their car. We would strongly encourage, and we've been communicating, all the business owners, like you all should definitely be pushing your tenants in your building to fill it out and ask them to, they could have postcards where they hand them out and we could provide you with something so that they can provide something to their like customers that are coming in, like patients in the doctor's offices. The only caveat I would just add is that I think we want to be a little careful. People with opinions about it, but who haven't come to Hanover, I don't think that's really what anybody's particularly in. I could be wrong. That's not. It's not really just to get people's opinions on it. It's to get people's experiences with it. And so if someone lives a couple towns away and has never been to Hanover or has never driven through Allen Street in the last month, you know, how valuable is that feedback versus someone who drove through town, had a negative experience? How do we get to that person? It is a little harder. I mean, maybe we can try the signboard again also, which kind of hits drivers a little bit more, you know, sharing it on social media and just, you know, any outlet would be good. I would just encourage that we try to get it to people who have some interaction with Allen Street, not just folks who have an opinion from a distance, if that makes sense. But if there's other things, I mean, we can definitely give you postcards that you could give to tenants, if that would help too. You know, that has the survey link on it, things like that. Because those are important people whose feedback we definitely do want. People who regularly come to, you know, a property on Allen Street, but maybe aren't walking.
So thank you, Diane and Betty. Are there any other members of the public who would like to make a comment? All right, seeing none, we will turn to the town manager monthly report. Alex, you're on.
Okay, this is a little bit of a longer one, and I've got a long memo too, so I'm going to go quickly. So just stop me if there's anything I need to stop on. I won't quite do my auctioneer voice. All right, so we talked about Allen Street a little bit already. Just included a couple pictures from the kickoff. And I won't spend too much more time on that, other than that we do have some cool events coming up, and we do have the block party on July 26th and 27th. Moving on down to HR updates. There were just a couple different things over the last month or so that we started talking about on the department level with staff that I wanted to make sure to communicate up to the select board as well. So one, which I thought was kind of a cool idea that came from another town manager in another town, is that if you have an internal posting for a job and one of your employees applied for a job and didn't get a promotion basically, that automatically triggers a conversation with human resources where we talk about, well, it's looked like you wanted to move up, you know, what are your goals? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And just try and understand, you know, encourage people who are interested in sort of moving up through the organization. We've also started talking about something that we've called senior leadership teams, which is making sure that it's not just sort of department heads that really are kind of the focus, but the department heads and deputy department heads and creating more succession planning activities in all of our departments. And then the last update was this GROW framework, which stands for Growth, Review, Opportunities, and Wellness or Well-Being, which is this sort of acronym describing the sort of annual review process that we've started talking a little bit about that we are attempting to roll out for FY26 for next year. And so we're sort of building that out right now with a recent promotion, which I actually have an update on from writing this report, which is exciting. I'll get to that in a moment. So we do have about 15 positions open right now. That is more than 10% of our staff. We've got a lot of open positions in Public Works right now. How many, Pete, in Highway? 4?
4 in Highway, 3 in Utilities.
4 in Highway, 3 in Utilities. That's 7 open positions in Public Works. And I think we've got 5 at Police. And so just sort of flagging that, that we've definitely got some concerns there. And the highway ones, of course, part of the concern is making sure we've got plow drivers for the winter, which is sort of impossible to wrap our heads around right now, 90 degrees outside. But just that takes a couple months of planning. The next piece is that I'm excited. I actually do have an update on the deputy fire chief. And so I'd like to congratulate Captain Josh Merriam for being promoted to the deputy fire chief of the Hanover Fire Department, which we were really excited about. Mike Gilbert, who was the deputy chief, has been promoted to chief. And Josh Merriam, who is a captain, has been promoted to deputy chief. This was a rigorous process that involved, the deputy chief involved internal applications and the same MRI assessment center that's like an 8-hour-long interview process that former retired police and fire chiefs conduct. It's very rigorous. We've been using it at the police department for years to do promotions as well. So we're excited about this new senior leadership team at Hanover Fire, and we talked about this a little last time, but that has been a long process And we're just very excited to settle things over there a little bit and kind of move forward. So yeah, that's a good one.
Congratulations, Alex, to you as well. That's a great process, and I'm looking forward to working with Josh.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We're so lucky to have, I mean, we did this search and the best candidates were our internal candidates, which is pretty cool. So appreciate that. And then next is actually another fire update, which is to congratulate Dana Hartley, who completed his AEMT, which is another level up from EMT. And that's just a sort of another advancement in our EMS division at fire. Next is some budget and audit updates, and we do have Ellen here. I'm happy to read the bullet points off if you would prefer me to.
I mean, I can comment, I don't.
But you're certainly better than me to.
Document it in front of me.
Do you want the bullet points?
No, it's okay, I think I can speak Ellen Bullion, Director of Finance. So we're coming close to crossing the finish line with the fiscal year 23 audit. We had just a couple of documents outstanding. I have one questionnaire completed, one that just needs some additional data pulled, and then I'll circle back with auditors and we will schedule time to complete that. We are heading full speed into the fiscal year 24 audit. A week from tomorrow, we'll have our initial planning session with our auditors and be reviewing some of our control documents and some of those questionnaires for fiscal year 24. And I think as probably the most important update in the manager's report is that today our accounting and HR analyst started, and Tom Grantham, and he joins us with 6 years of audit experience, some municipal government experience with the city of Claremont, and we totally and thoroughly overwhelmed him with information today, but he'll get up to speed quickly, and again, his initial focus will be addressing the audit weaknesses that we have. Particularly with a focus on updating our fixed asset inventory in our financial system.
Wonderful.
Great.
That's
So,
exciting.
Yeah,
So,
really exciting. Thank you.
welcome,
exciting.
Tom, and congratulations, Ellen. So,
Thanks.
thank you. Thanks
Thank
for
you,
the
Ellen.
update on the audit. Any questions there? No? Okay. All right.
And I know I'll skip CIPC because I know we'll get to that from the Selectboard reports. On the housing redevelopment and planning, I just wanted to include, I know we talked about it last time, but I just included a picture of some of our staff winning the master plan award, so that's just always really nice. And so thanks to Beth Eisenhart, Vicki Smith, Alex Taft, and Bruce Simpson who are pictured there. The other thing was just totally random. This housing project example I just thought was very cool. That was this housing development outside of Atlanta, Georgia, where it was sort of done where they did a big residential housing development that was sort of paired with creative studios. So it's really for filmmakers and creative types. And the entire housing development, which looks from like the sky, like the drone shots, like a normal, sort of sprawl suburb development, but there's no cars inside at all. It's all walkable within the development. And just thought that was kind of a cool project. I don't know much about it. Maybe it's terrible in real life, but it seemed pretty great from reading about it. And so I thought I would pass that link along. Also included, moving on to transportation and mobility. I do have a memo from Public Works with a bunch of summer construction projects, so definitely want to take a look at that. Next is moving on to downtown Hanover. We talk about that a little bit in the board committee memo, and I'll just mention that our meeting this last week, it was one of our most well-attended meetings probably. It was over 30 people that were there, and we had folks from Hanover Improvement Society, the Upper Valley Business Alliance, the Proudy, a whole bunch of different stakeholders, and it's just really nice to see all those different people in the room together. Did include a picture of that. So next is sort of an initial readout of some of the feedback that we've gotten about the placemaking pilot on Allen Street. We're so early in. This is written, less than 2 weeks after the whole project started. This was before we had done any of our really big events. But did want to pass along the feedback that we got so far. And so this is a couple days old because this was written on either Wednesday or Thursday last week. One of the main questions, and I put a screenshot of this in the report, which was how likely are you to come to future events, activities, or public spaces on Allen Street? And you can see the breakdown from very likely to very unlikely. And we do have about 70% of people that are favorable to returning, and about 17% of people that were not favorable to returning. I read through all of the comments as well, and when I read it, there were 59 narrative comments, and plus or minus one or two, about 38 were positive reactions. 7 are either, I put in a sort of not sure or maybe or mixed category, and then 14 were generally negative reactions. And so we didn't see anything in there. We wanted to see if there was any feedback of things that we needed to change, like midstream, if there was something people pointed out that we needed to know about right away. There's a lot of folks expressing an interest in more public spaces. Some of those people were saying Allen Street is the right space. Some of those people were saying we're not sure Allen Street is the right space, but we really like the idea of more public spaces. And so I want to make sure to differentiate those comments because they are similar and different. Got some positive feedback about sort of the feeling of walkability and the bike parking. We did get a number of comments, which is really part of the goal of these things, of people feeling like this sort of being a community space. A few of the residents that I bumped into said, I was just sitting on a picnic table and then I bumped into somebody, and that they were sort of saying that there's not a lot of places downtown in Hanover where that is possible. Some of the concerns that were expressed, and I think also some of that was lost during COVID too, that people just weren't out and about the way that they had been previously. Some of the concerns were about access, especially to some of the businesses that are closer to the School Street side of Allen Street. Some concerns about the amount of car parking and availability of parking as well. Some folks, although they appreciated the public tables that are out there, some people said that they would like to see more activities and things that they can do. We did have an idea early on about doing some sort of splash pad, and now thinking about how much time we spent on even just picnic tables, there's no way we could have done that for this year, but although it would have been nice in the heat. So that was another comment, was some people liked the space to sit, but also wanted like more games or things to do throughout the day. And then some concerns about where the delivery trucks are going. I know we spoke maybe last week, and it sounded like maybe some of that had improved, maybe some of that hadn't improved. A little hard to pin down exactly. So those were some of the different pieces of feedback sort of pulled out. Of course, at the end of the project, all of the feedback, all of the surveys, all of the data will be provided to the select board, to the downtown group, to anybody, to the public. And I think I would expect, this is certainly not my decision to make, but I would expect that at some point, probably in September, staff will want to provide some sort of report to the select board and to the public, what people have heard, how things went, and figure out where to have the conversation about what the next steps are. So I think one of the important things to note is that there's not a next step planned. There are conversations about, we talked about this in the very beginning. The conclusion could be, close Allen Street all the time. The conclusion could be close Allen Street none of the time. It could be doing it on weekends. I mean, there's all the different options are on the table, and nothing's been decided at this point. And those conversations and decisions will be made here in the select board, with the exception if the road were to be closed permanently, that has to be made at town meeting, not by the select board. So there'll be a lot more feedback, but just wanted to give a little bit of a readout of some of what we've gotten so far. And then I would also just encourage anybody with feedback in the short term, parking, traffic concerns, something broken, please use that Allen Street at hanovernh.org email address, and that will make sure it goes to somebody who can take a look at that. Moving on to College and Town. I've mentioned this before, but with ARPA funds, so almost no taxpayer dollars needed, Hanover taxpayer dollars needed at all. We are working on building out the infrastructure for at least 2 different high-speed free Wi-Fi access points in the downtown. One will be kind of in the kind of plaza space in front of the Nugget, and the other would be out here in front of Town Hall. And those would be permanent. Those are built off of Dartmouth's fiber, which they've been very generous to let the town use for free for this. And so we'll probably be hearing about that a little more in the coming months. Next is some updates about town meeting feedback. I finally had a chance to scan through all the feedback forms that we did at town meeting. There were only about 30 that were filled out, and just wanted to share a little bit of that feedback here. And then we have a monthly election meeting with our clerk's office, supervisors, moderator, and some staff. And I've got a stack of papers in a folder downstairs for them if they want to go through all the feedback forms. So from that, 24 out of 30 people that filled out the forms found the information that we put out ahead of time meeting is valuable. 4 people found it not valuable, and 2 people in a sort of other category. Some of the comments included, though people appreciated the website, the town report, and the podcast, some people did suggest that we could put more summary and sample information out as well. And sort of taking information down to more concise things, which, as many of you know, is not my strong suit. Next is 15 out of 24 people found the new layout, or said the new layout was an improvement, with 5 people who did not think it was an improvement and 4 people who weren't sure. Several of the comments, I would say out of those 5 who didn't think so, probably 3 or 4 of those were that people couldn't see the screen. They said from the seating, or they couldn't see the stage. I do think that's very easy to fix. We had the same issue last year with the screen only in one spot of the gym. And so if you're sitting in front of that, it's great. If you're on the other side of the gym, it doesn't really matter where things are, you really can't see it. And so we did briefly look at doing a second screen this year, but it was going to, I forget exactly how much. It did not seem like it was worth spending money on this year. So we nixed that, but something to think about in the future. And we also, the stage where the select board sat and the moderator was a little lower than what we kind of anticipated, and that could probably be raised next year. On layout, most of the people who left comments said they liked the tables. They could kind of meet and mingle with other community members. Some people definitely did say that they preferred the bleachers rather than the tables, but most of that was because it was easier to see. And then just a couple other random comments that I think are just worth mentioning, which is that people really appreciated the town moderator and how the meeting flowed and kind of keeping things on track, and that people also mentioned in a few of the comment forms that they appreciated people contributing respectfully at town meeting, which I think just with everything everywhere these days is just worth, anytime you have that happen is worth calling out. I think that did happen and that people respected that about each other. Those will be, I'm sure, conversations that you all will want to have next year leading up to town meeting about what you want to do. Next was just, I included an article that was published in the International City County Management Association, sort of the global version of where a lot of nerds like myself like to go for conferences and workshops and things like that. I obviously talk a lot about public engagement, and they did a nice kind of feature article. It was laid out very nicely in their public management magazine about authentic and effective public engagement. And so I just included some screenshots of that here. And I think people will notice that Hanover is one of the places that really tries to go above and beyond what even the law says. And then next and last, I just wanted to mention that I went to this really wonderful event June 21st, 23rd in Manchester, New Hampshire, called the Citizens Assembly, that was put together by an organization called New Hampshire Together and the People, and it was meant to they ended up bringing about 50 or so residents in New Hampshire with different demographic and political backgrounds. They tried to make it as representative of the state as possible, and it was 3 days of facilitated breakout sessions where people talked about basically how to create a better civic and political environment in the state and the country and their communities. So they had facilitated conversations about how to get people to reduce polarization and all of that, and that was just really fun watching people really, spend an entire weekend talking about those sort of things. And the hope is that some of the ideas that came from that are being discussed with a number of state legislators. And there were a couple ideas that came out that the organization is hoping the state legislature will consider in the next session. So that's kind of a cool connection point. And then I had to include, because this was just too funny, just like in a small world, The People is an organization that was founded by Andrew Shue, who is an alumni of the high school I went to in New Jersey and was a star of Melrose Place and has done a bunch of other stuff. I saw the name tag Andrew Shue and I said, "You're not from New Jersey, are you?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Columbia High School?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, it turns out we grew up on the same street, a few years apart, but literally the same street in South Orange. And so that was just a really small world, and I just love those sort of things, like when worlds collide like that. And also just love seeing folks from my high school, which I really loved, involved in this kind of stuff. There's a lot of really great work happening there. So I just couldn't help but include a little update about that too. And that is my town manager's report.
Thank you. That is a whirlwind report. Probably the first time Melrose Place has ever been mentioned at this.
That's
place,
true.
But,
in any of my reports, yes.
yes.
Pretty cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's terrific. Questions for Alex? Okay. Thank you. All right, so we turn now to items requiring discussion, the first of which is public art on Allen Street. And Alex, did you want to introduce this item?
Sure. So we had a suggestion. Yeah, Jay's here from Jay Campion. Yeah, Jay, I don't know if you want to come up. I don't have the projector and stuff set up for tonight, or have my dongle. Thank you, Apple. But Jay had an idea of a way to kind of make Allen Street a little more vibrant. We weren't really sure what direction to go in it. We've talked about public art stuff a lot before and really wanted to invest in more public art, and we thought it would be a good conversation to have here in the select board. So I don't know, Jay, if you want to talk a little bit about what you were thinking there?
Yeah, well, I wanted to make, first of all, I wanted to comment on your comments, because I think they're really well placed, and I think that the changes of the signage that Diane recommended, and the issues about people coming the wrong way up the street, all well placed, and I think that we can take steps to try to do something about that, because it's really important. The second thing is that when it comes to this, I was talking about the possibility of doing some painting on the street. I sent some stuff around of that being done in other places to kind of create a sense of place, a pedestrian sort of place as a result of that kind of action. I'm not an art person myself, but I've seen some really cool stuff that's been done. My intention was to encourage that concept, but more importantly, to have whatever was done on the street emphasize going all the way down the street, so that there's a real sense of pulling pedestrians all the way down to the other end of Allen Street, rather than feeling like we created a blockage of activity that prevents things from going all the way down for retailers and for service providers and for all that sort of stuff, just to create a more visual sense of going through the space. So that was really my intention about thinking about using paint on the street. I did some research into it, and there are kind of common feelings about what types of paint one uses for that sort of thing. After thinking about it, it would appear that that it wouldn't be really economically feasible to put paint on the street that isn't going to last for a period of time. You don't want something that's going to wash away in a couple of rainstorms. And so I come to you with the idea that if there were something that we could do, either small for this year or maybe large potentially in the future, the idea being that to plan ahead so that when things go down on the street, we all feel good about them, and that they can be a more permanent feel by putting acrylics on there instead of wash away watercolors. So that's really all I had. I think there's some cool things that can be done that way. I like some of the stuff that has been done with lights and that sort of thing, but I just wanted to give this experiment the best shot that we can to see how we can really make it work for people, and with the understanding that there are some obvious issues that we're gonna have to deal with, like parking and the flow of traffic and all that sort of stuff, that we'll develop methods to handle it, but that at least for the first effort here that we do what you guys really, I think, have done, is set up a good measurement system so we can really get a sense of how it is before, during, and after, but also so that there's enough of it in this effort to really be able to say, yeah, this could really work, or this really doesn't seem like it's something that that's going to really benefit the town in general, or all of the businesses on Allen Street. So that's really where I was at. I don't know how other people feel about painting streets.
I think it's a new idea. I think the idea of public art is attractive and interesting, but it's always taste is in the eye of the beholder, so it's always a tricky proposition. But did you have something? I mean, we are late in the season with respect to Allen Street, right? So were you were not thinking for this year, or were you thinking for this year?
Well, initially I was, but I don't think that I am now, unless it was something that perhaps could be minor, but might have some impact, like one of the design that I threw together had some colors on the street, but also had dots on the sidewalk, which sort of, again, brought the eye down through the space, and that might be something that could be done that wouldn't be too intrusive and would look fine after everything gets pulled out in the end of the experiment, would still visually work to pull people down the street. That's really what I was thinking, but more I was thinking that if we had a concept that this was a good thing, that for the next go around we could maybe come up with some designs that people could agree on would be attractive and appropriate, because once they're down, they're down. Not permanent, of course, but committed down, and that if things worked out for this summer and we thought that another go around next summer was appropriate, we could initiate that then. Just that's really where I was at. Just kind of came up, and I don't know if it's something that I brought a professional artist up to look at it who's done that sort of thing, and we banged around some different ideas. We were also talking about art on the side of the Citizens Bank building for next year potentially, if we're going to do a pedestrian gathering space in that space, and that's a space, of course, that could be made permanent like that because there's no auto traffic or anything like that. But again, that's something, that's a big canvas. It would be something that we want to have, some real high quality stuff done that would be very permanent, and I think we want to have it really awesome in the first go around. So perhaps, between next summer and now, we take make the effort to have a design process in place that that the select board can vote on, that the downtown groups can vote on, and we can come up with some active steps for next year.
Okay, thank you. Questions of select board members?
Just a comment that public art was something that we identified long ago in this downtown group as something that everyone agreed that we wanted, but we haven't made a whole lot of progress on it. And I appreciate you trying to move it forward. I love the Ledger Park idea, and I've spoken to Nancy quite a bit about how we keep this moving and how we make progress on it, and we need to keep making progress because we haven't made much. So thanks.
Okay, that's me.
Thanks, Jay. Nancy, did you have a comment? Yes.
A comment that Nancy Carter, Barrett Road, Hanover. I'm struck by both Diane's comments and Jay's, that one of the things that painting streets could do is, especially as we continue on down Allen Street, is to remind drivers visually about that left turn coming wrong way into Allen Street. Certainly a painted surface would cause them to stop and look, and it might also cause our truck traffic to either be slower or be more mindful of using those spaces. And yeah, I'm busy working with Hanover High, actually. I mean, Jay's comment about a professional artist, but I'm also interested in student artists helping us out in both Selectboard Park and Sustainability Park possibly too.
The Hood, folks from the Hood as well are interested in helping.
Great, thank you, Nancy. Yes.
Steve Buskey.
owner of 5709 Allen, and I just wanted to give you my opinion about this. I'm totally against it. If he wants to put it up by his building, fine, but I'm trying to run a couple of office buildings, and I don't need paint going down there. And the other thing is, who's gonna be liable? Is the town of Hanover gonna be liable when somebody slips, or somebody skids, or something happens to somebody permanently? Somebody's gonna have to be liable for this if something happens, so that's my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Thanks.
Jay, did you want to
I
speak to
just
that?
wanted to address your concern, Steve, about the surface itself. I did a bunch of research and you have to choose the right stuff to make sure that you don't have that happen. It's absolutely.
But if it does, even though you use that stuff, who's liable?
The town.
Well,
Yeah, that's, yeah.
That would be the town of Hanover.
And if I can just jump in, Jay,
Betty, would you mind coming to the table, please? Sorry, we can't hear you.
The table.
Yes,
We're friends.
okay, all right, good, okay. All right.
Vote for the record, kiss on the forehead.
My also concern, I saw the two samples that you had, the one that had the design and I noticed, is it stain proof? If people are eating at the tables and they're spilling this and that or whatever, animals walking up and down and peeing on the, it happens. Does it stain it, then it starts to look dingy and not attractive at all, so that was.
Yeah, I understand. There's been a lot of this done elsewhere, and we can certainly find out more if it's something we want to do, and where we want to do it if we want to do it. We can find out more about the detail of that sort of thing, but it is being done in a lot of different places, even some places in New Hampshire. When I was coming back from Maine last weekend, I stopped in Dover, and they had some areas that were painted on the street. One of the things that I thought was really cool and might be something to consider that has nothing to do with Allen Street is doing some coloring of our crosswalks so that they're more visible to traffic coming by.
Lebanon did all.
Right, Lebanon, after a process of deciding, different things to try, they decided to go with the solid yellow. But I really think that improving the visibility of crosswalks is a really good thing and doesn't necessarily have to be exclusive to that one that just comes right across Main to Allen Street. And that maybe that's something that's a town-wide aesthetic decision that makes a statement about, the town, the gown, the whole thing. Maybe it's green and white, but the idea being that we do something with our crosswalks that way. It's pretty cool.
Thanks, Jay. Okay. Unless there's anything else on public art on Allen Street, yes, Diane, okay, all right, yes, there is, okay. Yep.
I feel like I should stay up here.
You can stay.
Diane Busby. I'm just curious, we ran into Aaron Bogosian coming in here, and he said he wrote a letter to the select board with regard to the painting of the streets, and I just wonder, is that something you read openly, or it's private, or?
I have not seen such a letter. I don't know if other select board members have. I've not seen that.
I know Liz and them were in touch, but yeah.
We didn't get anything.
I'll have to double check then with him. And I'm just curious if this, are we getting the cart before the horse here? We haven't even decided whether or not we're closing Allen Street and we're painting it.
No, so there's been no decision about painting.
But Diane, you're right. The two are linked, right? So yes. So you're right in the sense that depending on what we decide with respect to Allen Street, the painting may be.
Is it going to happen no matter what? That's my question.
Which the painting?
Whether or not you're going to paint this, is it an option to keep the street open and paint, or keep the street open and not paint, or partial paint, or obviously this is cart before the horse because you haven't decided anything yet.
Right,
so.
and I suppose it could be somewhat independent, but in any event, I totally hear you, that, this is just a very initial discussion.
Understood.
And yes, okay, thank you. Sir?
I own 4 and 6 Allen Street down here.
I'm sorry, just tell us your name, please, sorry.
One of the,
Your name, Frank?
Frank
Frank.
Pizzuti.
Okay,
One of the concerns I have is that what has happened on Allen Street, there's no parking there anymore, which means in my mind that the parking commission has maybe 3-4 guys that are not needed on Allen Street on the weekends. And this past weekend, because the sun comes up in the east, goes down in the west, it's right above this building at about 10:30 or 11. So that makes the pavement out here on Allen Street extremely hot. And what happened was, a lot of the people took it upon themselves to grab the tables and chairs and push them up against my building in front of the display windows. And they just sat there for a couple hours and schmoozed and talked, which is fine.
In the shade.
They're out of the sun, but it doesn't help my business at all. And I was thinking maybe the parking commission could have these guys at least patrolling that sidewalk once in a while and moving those people off the sidewalk and back onto the street. They won't be happy with it, I know that, but from a business standpoint, I've lost my windows, because the other thing is that Dave Barretti from Main Street Kitchens expressed to me one thing: there's parking at the end of my building for motorcycles, but I do notice that they back in, and he leaves his door open to be inviting to the public. And when these guys decide to leave, they just start the motorcycles up and everything, exhaust and everything goes right into his store. So he can't very well say, when you guys get ready to leave, would you come out here and let me close my door? So I think that's a detriment there, and I don't know how that affects the whole scheme of parking. I think there's only, I've only seen 4 or 5 motorcycles out there, so you're not, if you don't get any income from them, it's not going to be a big detriment to the town to lose that revenue. But
All right, go ahead, dear, because I wanted to add to what he's saying.
Yes.
I'm Betty Pizzuti, I'm
Yes.
his wife.
yes,
And the other part of that with the motorcycles, it was my understanding that part of the reason for closing Allen Street was to make it a pedestrian. It's always been a pedestrian. Everybody uses the sidewalks. People come from that park lot. It's not changed at all. There's not more people going up Allen Street because it's closed. But having those, it was, for me, if it has wheels, you have to have a license. You park at the meter. I have to park at the meter. And it's not fair to let motorcycles and mopeds park out in front of the businesses, number one. And number two, they should be parking at a parking space. Thank you.
okay, thank you, Betty, thank you, Frank.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes,
okay.
okay, yes,
I
thank
don't
you.
know how that can be addressed with the parking commission, but there shouldn't be, the table should not be on the sidewalk. Like I say, it's a detriment to my business. I try to display as much as I can in those windows to catch people's eyes as they walk down. And the same thing with Main Street Kitchens, they have a lot of inventory in those windows. Further up the block, where you got base on, that's all brick facade. There's nobody displaying any inventory there that I'm aware of. So, not that I should say.
Alex, you have a suggestion?
Yeah.
How we can address that?
Yeah, and I would say this is another good example, is like, you don't have to wait, a week and come on a Monday night. Not that it's not wonderful and you wouldn't be coming to these meetings anyway, for fun, but you can call us, you can email us as soon as you see something like that. We can't have the sidewalks blocked either, because we have a requirement, even beyond the fact that it's not good for your business.
From a fire standpoint.
From a legal standpoint, we are obligated to maintain ADA access on those sidewalks. So we can't have tables on those sidewalks.
Sorry, Jay. What? To bring that up. So I know
The tables and chairs going over on
Side,
your
there's a lot of
Yeah.
business.
Oh, you shouldn't have, that shouldn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, this is just, you email that Allen Street address or call town hall if it's during, normal business hours. If it's on the weekend, you can call the non-emergency line at the police department, and let them know, and somebody, we will take responsibility for making sure things are where they're supposed to be. Each business.
Say you've gotta move.
No, and that's okay. I mean, you certainly could, I guess, if you want to, but you can let us know and we'll do that.
Okay.
And again, you don't have to come to you can come to meetings if you want to, but you can just email, call us anytime. And again, we have, especially with those tables, each business has got to maintain their own space for the 3 outdoor tables. But for like any of the town related stuff, we are responsible for that. And even if it's a business one, we would reach out to the business owner. If the sawtooth tables were moved somewhere and
Yeah, I think there were those the Still North tables?
I think because those are kind of easier to move around.
Well, they're easier to move around. 2, they don't
have shade.
create any shade themselves.
Right.
And
The small tables are fine.
It should be Still North's responsibility to get them off the sidewalk.
It is, and if someone lets us know, we
take responsibility for making sure they
Guys,
do it.
let's, thank you all for the input. So, I mean, there's some nice problem solving going on here, which is terrific, but I think, so you're aware of this issue, you can follow up. And, and so you've got an avenue for communication. So I think, this will be resolved.
Well, yeah, well, I would say, but if it happens again, I mean, we can't necessarily prevent it from always happening. But if you see it, let us know and we'll take care of it.
I understand the people who are eating out there, it's usually around 11 to 12, and the sun's right up over the top of this building, and it bakes that.
And we looked at getting a sunshade. It would require
Those tables are really too small to house an umbrella without tipping over.
I'm just going to go out there with an umbrella. Yeah.
I'll call on you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. So let's move on to board and committee update and call for volunteers. This is an agenda item I think you wanted to go through maybe with Tracy, I'm not sure, but.
Yeah, and I think I will run through some stuff, and Tracy, Tracy's going to be for sure your point person going forward on some of this. This is a long memo, so I'm not going to read it word for word, or anything close to that. But basically, over the last year or two, we've talked a lot about the amount of sort of responsibility that's on a lot of our volunteers on different boards and committees. How do we get all the vacancies filled? Do we have the right boards and committees that are talking about the right things? For example, a lot of the parking related questions that come up here in select board meetings, we don't really have another place to talk about that. So this is really the only venue for it. And so I wrote a memo that was included in the packet that had a couple different sections. So the first is sort of a status of all the boards and committees but Tracy has been spending a lot of time basically collecting information from all of our boards and committees, making sure, that we have the correct terms, that, just a lot of sort of housekeeping. That's one small piece. The other is thinking about onboarding and training. So for all of our boards and committees, other than the land use boards, which I believe all of them, including the Conservation Commission, have some required training for members that the state has. Right, Planning Board, Zoning, and Conservation Commission.
The annual provided training, there's no requirement to take it.
Okay.
But the majority of the boards members take it.
Right. And I think we are probably in a similar place with other boards and committees, which is we actually don't have, depending on whether they're elected or appointed, it's hard to require things, but really encourage all of our boards and committees to do some sort of annual training that I'll talk more about in a second. Identifying a few areas where there's some policy gaps where we would want potentially more boards and committees that we've talked about. Another is just fleshing out the staff support. Have a good night. The sort of the staff required administration and logistics of all the boards and committees. Next is transparency and transparency rules and procedures for different boards and committees. And then the last is a call for volunteers. So the status kind of thing, number one, I already kind of talked about, which is we still have a little bit more information to gather, but just make sure we've got everything updated. We know all the members, know all their terms. Have we done oaths of office? Do the minutes get posted on the website? Do the agendas, things of that nature? Next is the onboarding and training. This is something that Tracy and I have started to talk about. We've collected and looked at some information that the New Hampshire Municipal Association provides in other towns, and I bulleted out a few different just examples of topics that we might want to cover. This is both for when people first get on a board, so they can get acclimated and learn stuff, but also for members on a yearly basis to kind of refresh. So one is a right to know training and updates, board staff relationships, running and facilitating effective meetings, standard operating procedures for creating agendas, writing minutes, how to do public comments, all those sort of things we do a little bit differently in most of our different boards and committees. And there's a bunch of other topics there that could be interesting topics for onboarding and annual training. The next, which I want to spend a tiny bit more time on this section, which is the new proposed boards and committees. And there are 5 total, really 4 that we're talking about proposing, one that's already been created. One is around recreation and cultural programming. We used to have a recreation advisory board, I believe it was called. We don't anymore. We used to have a parking transportation board. We don't have that. We did at one point have an affordable housing commission, although I think that's been a while. And then same actually with number 4, which is we had a downtown marketing alliance for the downtown. So each of those 4 things, Hanover in the last 15 years had active and in place. And for various reasons, they kind of fizzled out over the years. And we've talked about this in some prior select board meetings, and I think all of us have sort of identified that there's a need for a place to bring different stakeholders in the community together to talk about those different topics. And basically to be able to discuss things in greater detail and then bring to the select board more sort of things that have been discussed at greater length and that are a little bit more, polished isn't the right word, but maybe a little bit more comprehensive. So that the first iteration of an idea isn't being discussed here, but it's being discussed in a committee where you've got 6 different stakeholders present, and then they create a recommendation, and that recommendation comes to the select board. So those were the 4 different topic areas that we identified. And then the 5th one was the Board of Cemetery Trustees, which we didn't really have on the radar for this year, but which was created at town meeting. So I'm not going to read through each of those. This is really just to begin the conversation with the select board. I don't know how much, I guess, Carrie, would you prefer me go through more detail with each of those topic areas or kind of move through those a little bit, like a little bit quicker?
Probably a little bit quicker.
Okay.
It's fine. I think we've all read the memo. It is very detailed, so I want to, I think a little quicker is probably good.
Okay,
Yep,
yeah.
Okay.
And hopefully this will help support the conversations to have, in subsequent meetings. But so those were the 4 areas.
What does SOP stand for?
Standard operating procedure. Sorry. So how, when is the agenda created? When are agenda items due? What order do you go in? Things like that. Like that, all of our boards and committees have slightly different processes, which might be fine. But at least having a conversation about standardizing them, if that was the bullet point. So those are the different kind of topic areas where, each of those there's an opportunity to engage different stakeholders in the community as well. And maybe I'll just quickly, on the recreation side, the examples of projects that could be done are things like the child care pilot proposal could be discussed in a committee like that. The future home for middle school athletics, which is a conversation we need to have at some point. Supporting new events. Or future events, or Hanover Parks and Rec, which has kind of been growing in scope a little bit over the last year, which has been really great, and major kudos to all of them for picking up more things. But they've been doing more with green space and conservation maintenance as well through the grounds division. And having a conversation about that, those things could happen in that group. On the parking side, examples are things like utilization of different lots and looking at, should it be 10 hours, 2 hours, 3 hours, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. We don't really have a great place to go through all of those sorts of details. We've talked about some technology potentially in the future in the parking garage or other places. Holiday permit programs, employee permit programs, all that kind of stuff needs a home to talk about. So those are examples of things that could be talked about in some related parking committee. Housing redevelopment, this should be kind of an obvious one, but I think the kind of main point is that we've had this master plan advisory committee over the last 2 years that has brought a lot of stakeholders together. Those conversations have been sort of high level and conceptual, and I think certainly what I've heard a lot from the community and what we've talked about here is bringing those down to, okay, what do we now do? What's the sort of action follow-up from those things? And we don't really have a place to kind of discuss and ideate those as well. The Board of Cemetery Trustees is kind of an interesting one. I'm sorry, skip the downtown, although we've talked about that quite a bit here. And then the Board of Cemetery Trustees as well, which is making sure that we set that board up for success. We didn't really have anything in the budget or plans for that this year, so I want to be mindful again, because that's going to be Parks and Rec another thing on the list there. But we do want to figure out what staff need to be aware of, and then what the select board might want to think about as far as budget next year for all the boards and committees.
Can I ask a question on the cemetery trustees? And I'm kind of looking at John at the same time that I'm asking you, Alex, but have we been in touch? Has there been a dialogue there?
Yeah, actually I spoke with them today about setting up our first meeting.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yep.
Great. Good.
Cool. Thank you, John. The next is sort of understanding the staff support and administration, logistics. So making sure, especially there's a lot of staff time that goes into agendas, minutes, postings, policy memos. We've got a lot of different boards already. And if we're talking about potentially creating additional ones at some point in the future, making sure that we actually have the staff resources to support all of those things. But right now, we don't really have that sort of fleshed out anywhere. You know, what do the staff do for different boards and committees? Which staff do those things? And approximately how much time does that take? So that would be something that we would encourage a conversation about. Just making sure, you know, X board and the staff do these 3 different functions, and Y board and these staff do these 2 different functions. And just making sure we kind of flesh that out. And of course, as we do that, one of the things we will find is Rob's name will appear many times on that list as he staffs and provides support for many of our boards and committees. But it's important to really flesh that out and make sure we understand the capacity of our staff so they're not overextended in, you know, a million different places. The next is transparency, which is kind of an interesting one, because this is something that pretty much everybody in Hanover cares a lot about. But we have state laws that set somewhat of a low to medium bar in New Hampshire. For example, governing bodies like select boards aren't required to even have a public comment period or take public comment. They're not required to even publish an agenda before the meeting. They're required to notice the meeting. Of course, we do those things in the select board, but it's different in different boards and committees. And so part of the idea is to kind of put heads together and say, okay, what are the standards that we want to set in Hanover? Do we want to do public comments and agendas? How do we provide the minutes and things of that nature, and just making sure that there's a sort of policy across the town for whatever the select board ultimately, I think, is the decision maker there. You know, what is the goal from a transparency perspective? And then if that means that we need to provide additional staff support for a board or committee because they don't have someone to post the minutes or agendas, then that's something that, you know, needs to be taken into account during the budget process. Last section, before I wrap up with sort of the 3 next steps we were recommending, is a big call for volunteers. We've got some vacancies on some of our boards and committees. And like in a lot of things, a lot of work ends up falling on a small number of people, which anybody who's volunteered, I'm sure, is very familiar with. So we had 5 different sort of ideas about ways we could engage more volunteers in our boards and committees. And also what's really important about this is not just spreading the burden, but also making sure that all the great people that are on boards right now and maybe stepping off in the next 3 to 5 years, that we have an opportunity to get new people in before those people leave the boards, so that we can transfer that knowledge down to the new members. So one idea was a community nomination process, which is basically, instead of asking people to nominate themselves for a board or committee, asking community members to nominate another community member who they think would be great. And there's a lot of data that shows that you actually can get really great results and a lot more input. There's a lot of people who are wary about nominating themselves for things, but a lot of people in town know people who would be great for a board or committee. And so that is also something that data shows helps underrepresented groups get more representation in these sort of settings through peer nomination processes. So that's one idea. The other idea, which is one that I've not implemented before, was hoping to do here but did not get around to it, but wanted to at least make sure to put it on paper, and something that's worth talking about, which is one of the reasons that a lot of young people don't volunteer on boards and committees is rising costs of healthcare and housing and education and student loans. And what I found out the hard way is that when I was in South Orange and a volunteer mayor and a volunteer emergency medical technician volunteering about 50 hours a week for 4 years, 0 hours of that counts for public service loan forgiveness. If I was paid $1 a year, all of that would have counted. And if I was paid $1 million a year, all of that would have counted. But for some reason, volunteer work, no matter how many hours you spend, is ineligible for public service loan forgiveness. Even though there's actually the word volunteer in the materials that I Pretty sure I remember looking at when I was 17 years old and taking out those loans. And so one of the ideas that I've tossed around with a couple attorneys and others in New Hampshire and Vermont is, what if we allowed volunteers to get a $1 per year stipend? Would that then allow them to take that volunteering position? And it's not committing the town to anything, but it would enable them to go and submit the form to the Department of Education saying, hey, this wasn't a volunteer position. And that just might be one way with spending maybe $100 a year on the town side to enable young people an easier way to volunteer on boards and committees, because they would get potentially their loans, benefit to their student loans for that. So that was one idea. Another idea, and a couple of these were things that Tracy and I talked about. So this was one, for example, that she suggested, which is just a fantastic point, which was to make more one-time volunteer opportunities accessible, so that, you know, probably most of us who volunteer on boards and committees can think back to like a one-time thing that you got interested in something. And so we do, so a good example is like a cleanup day, and there was one or two others you mentioned, Tracy, that I'm now forgetting.
The yard sale.
The yard sale that Sustainable Hanover does is a great one. Election day is another great one. Is how we've got 100 people engaged on election day as volunteers, ballot clerks, and so basically one of the ideas is going to each of the boards and committees and saying, could you identify 3 ways per year, or something like 2 ways per year, whatever the number is, of ways that people can get involved for 4 hours at a time. And then that gives that person an opportunity to get involved, you get their contact information, and then maybe you can kind of pull them in once you get their foot in the door a little bit. So that's another idea, which is just to be really intentional about creating one-time opportunities for people to volunteer that are the sort of gateway to longer-term volunteering. The other one, which was another idea that Tracy had, which was thinking about creating a new resident packet, which is something we've talked about before, and I think may have used to be done in Hanover at some point in the past. I'm seeing some nods. And I know other times I've been in, we've done this, and it's been like wildly popular. You know, we have the records through our assessment assessor's office. Not as much for rentals, which is a little tricky, though would be interesting. With the rental housing ordinance, there might be an opportunity there. But certainly with property ownership transfers, sending people something in the mail or digitally that gives them access. Okay, here are the different town meetings, here are the boards, here's who to contact if you need help with X, and then get people plugged into volunteer opportunities through that. And then the last piece, which is really assigning a staff person in town to be a volunteer coordinator. We didn't really have that responsibility that lived in any department or any staff person. And that is something that Tracy will be taking point on, and which is great, because not only does that make a lot of sense in the clerk's office, which is a place where a lot of these things live, but Tracy, just personally, if I can say, Tracy, you've been a volunteer in town for many years, the How and other places, and I think you're very connected into the volunteer communities and just a great person to sort of take the lead and help coordinate some of these things going forward. So, it's a whole lot of stuff. The 3 ideas as far as next steps was getting a little bit more information and feedback from all of the boards and committees about their current practices and status of documents, things of that nature. The second is for the select board to consider the discussion and creation of those new boards and committees. And then after that, really implementing a very aggressive kind of call for volunteers, maybe within a few months or so. Once you know you have all the positions laid out, yes, we want to create this board, no, we don't want to create that board. Then say, okay, we need to fill X many positions, and maybe there's even a sort of thermometer like you do with fundraising. We've got 19 positions we need to fill, and every meeting it's a sort of countdown to say, okay, we've got 2 left, and we can really go out in the community and try to get community members interested. So those are the sort of 3 big takeaways from that. And I know it's a lot of stuff to just throw out there. We've talked about it a lot, and I just wanted to make sure to provide some of those thoughts and make sure we had a really great point person who could take the lead on all of this going forward. So
Thank you very much. That is a tremendous blueprint. It's a lot to execute against. Thank you, Tracy. I guess you'll be executing against that so, with a lot of people. So thank you. There's a lot of good ideas. That will take some time to unpack and prioritize. But a lot of great ideas there. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Select board members, questions? No.
I have some thoughts, but I can share those with Tracy afterwards.
Okay. Great. All right. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
So the The next item is the board retreat and board subcommittees. This is going to be very anticlimactic and brief because really what I need to do is get a date. So I'm going to go out to the select board and see if we can find a date that works. It will likely be early August. Rob will coordinate obviously with you as well on that. But the idea is to really prioritize and schedule against all the things we have to do. So so stay tuned, board members and Rob, I will circulate and try and get a date. Our next select board meeting is August 7th, I believe, right? So
That's a Wednesday.
5th, okay, 5th, thank you. So possibly that week, but anyway, we will talk amongst ourselves. The number D, a discussion of upcoming May 1st event listening session. And actually, we have circulated, and there are copies. Do you mind passing those out?
Yeah, those are?
Yeah, just in the corner. Okay, Joanne's got it. Okay, thank you.
The really long stick.
Okay. Thank you. So
Raise or lower, but just.
So what you'll see here is not much more than the agenda item, but it's fleshed out a little bit. So we are planning for August 20th, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Howe Library, a listening session. This is an opportunity to follow up on the discussion that began at town meeting on May 14th. Chief Dennis will be there, and Jeremy Eggleton confirmed it with me today that he will be the moderator, or sort of the MC or moderator. The idea is to have 3 segments, an overview provided by Chief Dennis. Secondly, breakout groups facilitated by select board members, so we'd have maybe 5 different breakout groups. And then, and that would be an opportunity for all of the participants to talk and for us to listen. And then a readout from the feedback, from the breakouts back in some sort of feedback to the reconvened plenary group. That would be the idea. So it's scheduled for 7 to 9 p.m. on the 20th. So questions on that? No. Okay, so we will come up with a plan to get the word out, but this meeting is part of that, but we will come up with some other ways to get the word out on that. Thank you. We turn now to, unless there's any questions, business requiring action. The first is a recommendation to adopt the Advisory Board of Assessors recommendation. This was not in the packet, however, we do have copies here as well. So if any of you are interested in the specific recommendations of the assessors, they're on this table. Joanna, you were actually there. Do you want to walk us through this a little bit?
Sure. We had, I want to say a half a dozen abatement requests come before the Board of Assessors.
Thank you all.
Thank you. And reviewed, and based on our assessment office's recommendation and after reviewing materials provided to the department and to the board, we propose abating a number of these. A couple of them, the Clifford properties, we postponed, will be meeting the week, I think August 6th. But for the most part, what you see before you, if you'd like me to go through each and every one, I'm happy to do that. But these are based on, basically what happens is if you are unhappy with your appraisal, you can request an abatement to the Board of Advisors. The assessor will review. Oftentimes there'll be a minor error that he didn't catch, or some change in the properties again that we didn't have. There's a couple of them, there's been changes in statute relating to nonprofit status, and so we addressed Upper Valley Hostel and other charitable organizations, Church of Christ Shabbat, and all of our churches in HIS. So I would move to move to accept the recommendations of the advisory committee. Or the advisory board of assessors.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Office, all those in favor?
Can
Aye.
I ask any
Oh.
questions now?
Sure.
So we-
Yes, so
We move and then we ask questions. Just tell me the order, so I'll definitely do it correctly.
so-
Do we do it
sorry,
before the
sorry.
second or after the second?
You know, we should
I
probably.
thought it was
After.
moved second
After
and
the second,
then
all right, so
questions,
we have
right?
not yet voted.
Yes, we have.
We have.
We voted.
Okay, four.
It's fine.
But she's got a
Four.
question.
I do.
Yeah,
I was
question
just
is-
wondering about what was up with the base in Hanover. I was wondering what that was, that the reduced assessment was based on recent income information, like what that meant.
So that means that my understanding is that for that particular one, part of rental properties, they can submit the income that they get, you know, their receipts for what they get for rents. And then your assessment is based on that, and there's some formula that Norm puts together. And so, and actually, we've seen rents drop in town in the past 4 or 5 years. So, not huge, but
So it's about the specific rents that they get, or based on,
it's based on the market. But I think what we should do is we can have, if that's a question, we can pull that one out and talk to Norm on it.
yeah, I was just from my conversations with him, there was, it was set within like a general geographic area and not the specific rents. So I was just wondering how it all worked.
I can't actually answer that question.
But I mean, I seem to recall that for commercial properties, the income-based approach is one way to value commercial properties, yeah.
Right.
So,
But the specific question that you're asking is more about geography of this property, right?
There's two.
Well,
there's-
I mean, the assessments can be done a number of ways.
Right.
Which is why I sat down and asked Norm that very question.
Yep.
And he said it wasn't based on the individual commercial properties rents, but rather what you could get for in that, like, block.
Well, there's two components. There's the land value and the building value. And so the land value is geographic based on whatever software that they use that comes up with some number. And then the building value is based on
Condition.
yeah, basically your net income divided by some number to come up with a valuation for that property. And so my assumption is based on saying, well, you value the building as this much, but our rent shows that it's actually valued at this much because we're not collecting as much as you say we should be. And so it lowered the valuation. Again, this is my assumption. I don't know.
I mean, but if you had like a building and you didn't rent it out, that wouldn't mean you didn't pay any, that wouldn't mean the building didn't,
Right.
yeah.
Right, but if you did rent it out and you didn't get as much as the town was saying you should be getting, then it would.
You can request an abatement.
You can request an abatement. Yeah, I was just wondering what the rationale was for this one.
Yeah.
And maybe it has something to do with the type of building or type of renters, but, so.
It's the one right next door.
Jenny, what would you like to do with respect to the vote? 4 of us.
Because I can't answer your question, so if you want to get an answer before we vote on that, we can pull that one
Can
out.
I just throw in, the select board role in this is very minimal.
Yeah.
We in general, just as Joanna made very clear in her motion, we just adopt it without at face value, not at face value, but we adopt what they have done. We in general don't have any input into this. It's kind of a weird situation.
Yeah, I just had a question about
Yeah.
how it was done because it impacts a lot of stuff in the town.
with respect to that, would it make sense to maybe have Norm come to a select meeting and could educate us? Would that be, strikes me that might be a good idea in any event.
I can just sit down with Norm, it's fine.
Okay.
I'll just
Or-
go with, now that I have this list, I can ask more specific questions.
Okay.
Thanks, Jenny.
And with respect.
Sorry.
I can vote for this.
So the last, so you are going to vote?
Yes.
You're
So
voting?
now we have 5 in the affirmative.
You're in favor, okay, so 5, all right, terrific, good, thank you. Sorry, that's next on the list.
Approval of the consent agenda.
Yes, all right,
Minutes of July 1st, donation to the library.
okay. So select board members, are there any items that you would wish to take out of the consent agenda prior to voting?
I wasn't there for the July 1st meeting, so
We should probably pull them
Yeah,
because
we
we don't
should
want
pull
to
those.
vote
So
on
we'll
them.
take that out, so there's the July 1st meeting. Okay.
yeah.
Yep. All right, so we pulled that out. It's the donations, and we are going
Oh,
to,
it's just a donation.
it's just the donations, and we're
Oh,
gonna
that's a tough one.
we're gonna read those anyway.
Yeah, so let's
so
just
let's
skip
pull-
the consent agenda.
Let's just go straight to approval of minutes on July 1st. Is there a motion?
I move we approve the minutes of July 1st.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there a discussion on minutes prior to voting?
Yeah, I actually I forget Rosemary's last name in terms of modifying that public comment. She was here,
Yes.
there's a blank there.
Oh,
Did you write it down?
I may
I've
have.
written it down. Good.
Well, I believe it's Rosemary Suheta, but I'm not sure how to spell it. So, all right,
Suheta.
we'll look it up, okay, all right.
Okay,
So,
great,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 One abstention.
One abstention, okay, thank you. Donations to the library, do you have that printed out?
I think Jared does.
Jared?
The donations? I thought that was in our packet.
It is.
It is. Would you be willing to
Yes,
articulate?
sure.
Yes.
So donations to the Etna Library has received in memory of Reed Drucker, James and Elizabeth Worcester, $100, Hoyt and Marianne Alverson, $50, Jay and Sarah Bucky, $50, Bruce and Rita Schneider, $50, Barbara Brown, $250, Margaret Abbott, $50, the Owaga Family Trust, $100, George and Judith Stanger, $100, Amy Yanofsky, $15, Bruce and Marion Waters, $200. In addition, the Etna Library has received the following donations: Alice and Milrod, $25, William and Karen Kramer, $18, Paul and Diane Guidone, $250, Margaret Bragg, $100 in memory of Petey Burney. Hanover Parks and Rec Department has received the following donations: Dartmouth College, $2,000 for the 4th of July celebration. Action requested, accept the donations to the Etna Library and Hanover Parks and Recreations listed above.
Okay.
So moved.
I'll second that.
All right. Discussion, questions?
I would just like to say, the number of donations is exponentially increasing, and it's a remarkable thing that we should acknowledge. We should thank the public for their generosity and thoughtfulness.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's move on to select board reports. Any committee or other select board reports of note? Had the downtown meeting?
Sure, yep.
Yep.
So downtown meeting, we had about 30 people. There were a couple people in and out, so I think it was 30. Great showing. We talked about a couple things. We got a presentation from Dartmouth Sustainability, Rosie Kerr. and she gave a really good brief on everything that's happening with the geo exchange, wells being drilled and pipes and all that kind of stuff. We talked about freshman orientation, which is coming up soon. We did something last year and we're looking to improve that this year. We spoke at length about Allen Street, Ledyard Park. We got a presentation from the Proudy, which went really well. 8 million raised, 3,500 participants, and they moved some stuff downtown, which we were appreciative of. The Tuesday tours that Dartmouth is holding, overwhelming response. They have to schedule more people. They sold out like immediately, which is pretty cool. We discussed public art as well, the website, and then parking. Lots of parking discussions, as every meeting seems to devolve into a parking discussion. But that was great. Any questions on that?
Questions on that? No, okay.
And while I have the mic,
Yes.
I also have the trustee of trust funds. I was at that meeting as
Yay.
well. That
Thanks,
was,
Jared.
yeah, that was enlightening. Sally Boyle was nominated as chair. Lots of discussion about right to know, as well as which paperwork is needed to execute the work of the trustees. Good meeting, I learned a lot, and next meeting is targeted for 8/29.
Okay, terrific, thank you. Joanna, well, I know we spoke about the assessors. Any
Yeah.
other meetings?
Nothing to report that I can remember.
I'm gonna end on me, but let's keep going. Alphys.
Nothing to report. There was a Conservation Commission meeting that I was away last week, so I missed it.
Jane, I know we had the CIPC meeting, maybe others, but.
Yeah, we had the CIPC meeting the first time since town meeting to get ready for next year's budget. So that was exciting, the idea that we could maybe do a lot more this year in terms of reviewing projects, hopefully getting good proposals in by August, all sort of connected to the strategic vision of the plan laid out by the Sustainability Master Plan, and then work through those and make some recommendations on what type of capital improvement projects we can do when. A lot of moving parts and pieces. And then for Sustainable Hanover, they had an energy subcommittee meeting, and the big news were the new community power rates came up in, and they are once again lower than Liberty, so that is great news. And the unexpected news was the greenest power of them all, the rates actually came down. So if you were on the fence about like stepping up and getting the most green power, it's a good time to do it.
Question?
Yeah.
Did they talk about people with solar?
They
Yep.
did, and it's still being worked out.
But it's
Yeah, it's, there's a number, and Pete can probably speak to it more articulately, but there's a number of entities involved, and it's now gone, there's a docket, because there are a lot of people interested in this, so it will be settled in a legal manner. So we will get the number, we can follow along, because we are not the only town or community interested in keeping our energy that we produce and not paying those transfer charges. There are a lot of them, and the utility company, of course, is very interested in charging those transfer fees. So that will be worked out in the courts. So we don't, that's put on hold until it moves through the legal system. Everyone's really excited about a sustainability coordinator, so they're asking about that. And they had good news to report, and this kind of transitions to Hanover Bike Walk as well, with the e-bike lending library, where it was a great partnership with Dartmouth this year, where 4 of the 6 events were on campus. One of the events was at the 4th of July, right on the green. And we had exceptionally moving stories this year, from a grandfather who bought his first e-bike right after our first e-bike lending library, which was 6 years ago, and had brought his granddaughter to help pick out one. So there was like an intergenerational connection. They're all gonna be an e-bike family. To a woman who had suffered severe medical stuff from a stroke and had some fused joints and hadn't really been able to ride a bike. Was really nervous about it, and some of the volunteers rode with her. She tried a bunch of different bikes, and then finally found one that had a throttle that would let her get going, and her leg, which otherwise wouldn't move, but then when she was going, she could ride a bike. And she was basically in tears, but she was now felt normal, and she could ride a bike, and she was basically already ordering one by the time she left the e-bike lending library. So that was really kind of nice to see the access unfold right before our eyes, and how that really improved people's lives. Other Hanover Bike Walk news is and Dartmouth Bikes and the Hanover Police Department and Dartmouth Safety and Security have all partnered up to have a new bike registration program. It's called Project 529, and it will be available to the Hanover community as well. And what's really neat about it is when you get a sticker and register your bike and take a photo of it, everyone who has the app, if your bike goes missing, you just send out an alert, and you can do some crowdsourcing to return your bike. This is really great in Hanover because a lot of times bikes are not stolen, they are just borrowed, and then they end up in a different place, and this is a way to get it back. The other really cool thing about Project 529, which was really researched very well by a recent graduate, Wendell Wu, who then went on and helped build the bike walk census tool. It's in effect across the country. It's really well used from here up through Canada and out through Colorado. So if you do have your bike registered and you go somewhere else, there's a good chance you can also benefit from that same recovery system. It will be shared with our police department and shared with Dartmouth Safety and Security as well. So they will have insight into it. And to complement that and to help get the bikes and scooters registered, the police and safety and security have bought a bunch of bike lights that can be attached to scooters as well, to help make people traveling more visible. So that's exciting news, and that hopefully will be rolled out this fall. So look for that, especially if you want to register your bike, get a sticker from Dartmouth Bikes. And then the planning board, the big news was there was a site plan approval of 25 West Wheelock, which will add about 290 beds right on West Wheelock within walking distance of campus in downtown. So it's very exciting. And the planning board has started work on Chapter 11 of the Sustainability Master Plan, which is the implementation plan. So more on that to come. Stay tuned to the planning board. It's very, very exciting stuff.
Thank you, Jenny. That's a lot of committees.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, there are no other items. Any other items that any of the select board members wish to broach this time? No?
We do need to have other business here somewhere.
Yeah.
We should just other business before adjournment.
So I'll just say we should, that we have a contingent from Nihamatsu, our sister city in Japan, on July 29th. They'll be coming to Town Hall for about a half an hour, but they are, Heather Drynan is escorting them around, I think, and she's coordinating. They'll be in our community that weekend, and I think that will be toward the end of their weekend. Is that right?
Yeah, so they'll be coming to Town Hall on Monday morning, just as before they head down to Yale.
What time?
9 a.m.
From 9 to 9:30 here.
Yes.
So everyone's welcome them. And
So select board members, if you can make it, that would be terrific.
I should be able to make it.
it would be nice. I don't know if we have any Town of Hanover swag. Do we have like pins or anything? I don't remember.
think we decided lose swag was good.
Lose
Yeah,
swag.
swag, yes.
Lose swag.
I mean, it's like synonymous.
Yeah. I don't know.
People just really want donuts.
That's fine too.
At 9.
Edible swag, yeah.
I'm not sure they're too sweet people.
We may have pens.
Yeah, I think the kids really like pins, if I remember correctly.
What's the date again?
July 29th, it's a Monday morning, I think.
Yes,
You should get woolly hats.
Yeah, that's a
People
good
love
idea.
woolly hats.
They've,
woolly hats.
Yeah, even though it's summer.
beanies, yeah, it's a really good idea.
We need Hanover swag.
Yeah, me too. All right.
There are a lot of
It's the
places.
benefits for being on the select board. Maybe I'll go order some t-shirts.
Best.
Thank you. If there's nothing else, we need actually a motion to move into non-public session.
I'm gonna pursuant to, do you wanna read it?
Pursuant to 97.
Why don't you just make the motion?
Yeah.
Just make the motion, Carrie.
Yes,
You
sorry,
did.
move into non-public session pursuant to RSA 91:1:3, 2, A, B, D, E, and L.
Second.
Second,
Sorry.
roll call.
Okay.
Callahan, yes.
Rasmus, yes, sorry.
Chamberlain, yes?
Burke, yes.
Whitcomb, yes.
Okay, terrific. We are moving into non-public. And Bobby, do you have a few minutes? Can you stick around? There's something that you'll see. It'll be short, 5 minutes.
Oh, those things.